The setup I use for high temperature cooks is the same setup I use for my low and slows. I start to cook off with only the amount of hot coal I'm going to need to get the maximum temperature that I want. Then I control the burn time or the cook time with a bed of unlit coal. Now if I want to cook longer, I just start to cook off with more unlit coal. If I want to start to cook off at a higher temperature, I just start to cook off with more hot coals. So how do you know how much coal you need to start to cook off with for using this method? Well, that just comes through trial and error. And I've done this enough times to know that. So for this cook here, I'm going to want 350 degrees. I'm going to want that out for a good hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. So I'm starting it off with a fuel supply, and I counted these out just for the sake of this video. Fuel supply is about 55 unlit coal, and the heat source that I'll dump on top, that's that's about 2/3 and 3/4 of a chimney. I just kind of dumped it in there, so I'm guessing that's probably around, say 55, 60 hot coal that I'll dump onto the fuel supply. The reason I use this method is because I found if I dump a full chimney of hot coal into this kettle, and that's a master forge chimney which holds 70 coals, that's enough to bump the temperature in this kettle up to close to 500 degrees. Now if you're using a Weber chimney that holds 100 coals, that'll bump this kettle up to close to 600 degrees. So I found, and if you do it that way, then you got to choke the fire off, get the temperature to drop, then you got to fiddle around with the vents to try and get it to stabilize. I found it's much easier just to let the kettle climb to the temperature that you need, and it's much easier to stabilize it there. Okay, I added a fuel supply, and you notice I have that in a pile, and I do that so all the heat's concentrated in one area. That way it can burn its way down and out as it eats through the fuel supply. So now I just throw the grate and lid on and let it come to temp. My vent settings are, I have the top set at about 1/3 open, the bottom is wide open, and I leave the bottom wide open because this is a high temperature cook. So I want them coals to be nice and perky. I want that air to get underneath there and keep them good and hot. Okay, we're at the 20-minute mark. I have my 350 degrees. I always allow 15 to 20 minutes for the grill to come to temp. That's normally about what it takes if you have your vent set right. Now I take the lid off, clean the grates, and then the meat goes on. Okay, the meat's on. If you're curious what that is, that's a 3-pound marinated pork loin. Now the lid goes on and we monitor the cook. First check-in, we're at the 30-minute mark. Still sitting at 350 or real close. So I'm going to give the pork a 180 spin. That's all there is to that. Now it's back to monitoring the cook. Just so you know that every time you take the lid off these things, you're going to get a temperature spike. Once I placed the pork loin on and put the lid on, in about 10 minutes, the temperature was sitting at about 285 degrees or 385 degrees. So I knew that the temperature would drop back down because it takes 15 to 20 minutes for the temperature to restabilize. So just keep that in mind. When you take the lid off, if you get a temperature spike, don't go fiddling around with that vent because the temperature will settle back down. Second check-in, we're at 1 hour mark. I still have my 350 degrees. Now, while we're at it, I'll check this thing. See what temp I have. Shooting for 145, 150. Yep. A little ways to go. Okay. Lid goes back on. I'll check with you again. Okay, this is the third check-in. We're at the hour and 18-minute mark, so it's been an hour and 18 minutes since the pork went on. Let me give us a check again. You see the temperature starting to drop a little bit, probably down to about 340. So if this isn't done, I'm going to have to open the vents up a little bit. Let's take a check here. There we go. Got my 145. That's what I want. Okay, so hour, say just about hour and 20 minutes since the lid went on, and it was 20 minutes till it come to temp, so we're looking at 120 and 20, about an hour and 40 minutes, and we were able to maintain 350 degrees, and I never made one adjustment to the vents. So I'm going to throw that pork loin over the coal a little bit and give it a little bit of a sear. I don't need to show you that because this video is about controlling temperature, not how to cook pork. And just to show you how much coal's left, how much heat we have left in this, it's going to start to settle down a little bit, so I would have to open the vents if I needed to. But you notice how all the coal's been lit now. It burns down and then out both sides, so I kind of got an even cook. That's why I set this up the way that I do, as far as putting the coal right in the center in a pile.